The story begins with Wild, a professional gambler who has decided to retire and spend his days traveling through coastal cities. One day, a stunning woman walks into a bar, and Wild immediately tries to flirt with her, but she completely ignores him and goes to sit alone at a table. Wild gets pretty annoyed, realizing he's no longer as charming as he used to be. A few moments later, a man named Sergey walks into the bar and sits with the woman. The second she sees him, she starts yelling at him, and the two begin arguing. Seeing the opportunity, Wild walks right over and shamelessly flirts with her in front of Sergey. He even grabs her hand and tries to dance with her. Sergey instantly loses his temper and tries to stop him, but he doesn't stand a chance. Wild suddenly grabs Sergey by the hair and rips off the wig he's wearing, humiliating him in front of his girlfriend. Embarrassed, Sergey storms out of the bar with her. But the second they step outside, Sergey starts acting tough, telling his girlfriend that he could have beaten Wild easily, but didn't want to because she was with him. Just as he's bragging, Wild walks out of the bar holding the wig and says, "Hey, come get your wig back. Too bad it doesn't fit me." That pushes Sergey over the edge. He puts his girlfriend in the car, marches back toward Wild, and starts yelling at him. Wild only makes things worse by tossing the wig onto the ground. Furious, Sergey lunges at him, beats him up, and even knocks him to the ground. Wild gets scared and quickly walks away, while Sergey's girlfriend is thrilled by what she just saw and becomes even more impressed with him. On the other side of town, we see a doctor stepping outside the hospital during his break to smoke a cigarette. But suddenly, he spots a badly injured young woman lying unconscious right outside the entrance. Without wasting a second, he rushes over, carries her inside, and takes her straight to the emergency room. The doctors immediately begin treating her, desperately trying to save her life. While she's still conscious, they ask for her name or any information about her family, but she only keeps repeating one name over and over again. Wild, Wild. Moments later, she loses consciousness, leaving everyone confused about who this mysterious Wild really is. The next morning, Wild wakes up, gets in his car, and starts looking for work. Ever since retiring from professional gambling, he's been making a living as a bodyguard. He meets his friend Benny, who jokingly asks him how he always manages to survive the crazy situations he gets himself into. Wild proudly smiles and says, "I'm a professional, it won't happen again." While they're talking, a young man named Cyrus walks in and asks Benny if he knows a bodyguard named Wild. Wild immediately tries to avoid him because Cyrus has no idea what he looks like. But Benny points right at him and says, "That bald guy over there." Cyrus walks over, introduces himself, and explains that he's a high-stakes gambler. He wants to hire Wild as his bodyguard so nobody can rob him after he finishes gambling at the casino. Then, surprisingly, Cyrus asks Wild to tell him about his qualifications before hiring him. Wild bursts into laughter and says, "I'm a 3-time world boxing champion. I also used to be a pilot in the US Army, and I'm incredibly rich, but I do have one problem. I lie a lot." Cyrus laughs so hard at the answer, but in the end, he still decides to hire Wild. The two agree on a time and place to meet so Wild can start the job. A little later, Wild heads home for lunch, but when he gets there, he finds Sergey, the same guy who beat him up outside the bar, waiting for him. Surprisingly, Sergey gives Wild a big hug. We then find out that the whole fight was staged. Sergey had paid Wild to let himself get beaten in front of Sergey's new girlfriend so she'd be impressed and agree to marry him. Now, Sergey has come to pay Wild the $1,000 they agreed on, but Wild only takes $500 and hands the rest back, saying, "Keep it, and buy yourself a new wig to replace the one you lost." After that, Wild heads to a restaurant for lunch since he finally has some money in his pocket. While he's there, he meets his friend Mary, and the two of them spend the whole meal making fun of a guy sitting at the next table because he's somehow dating 7 different girls at the same time. After finishing his drink, Wild heads back home, but when he gets there, he's surprised to find Holly waiting for him, the same young woman who was found badly injured outside the hospital at the beginning of the movie. Wild is heartbroken when he sees the condition she's in. He gently asks her who did this to her. Holly explains that she had been spending the night at a hotel. After leaving, she got into the elevator with a man and his 2 bodyguards. They kidnapped her, assaulted her, and brutally beat her until they broke several of her bones. When they were done, they dumped her outside the hospital and disappeared. Wild is furious. He asks if she remembers what they looked like or even one of their names, but Holly tells him she knows nothing about them except the name of the hotel where it happened. The moment Wild hears the words Golden Nugget Hotel, his expression changes. He knows that place is filled with dangerous mobsters and ruthless criminals. In fact, he had warned Holly before never to go there. Holly desperately begs Wild to help her get revenge on the men who destroyed her life. Without hesitation, Wild agrees. He immediately heads to the Golden Nugget Hotel. Once inside, he goes to the laundry room and meets an old friend named Milan. Wild describes the man Holly told him about and asks if she knows him. Milan says she knows exactly who he's talking about, but asks Wild to meet her later at 4 p.m. in the restaurant after she finishes work. When they meet, Wild ends up buying her a burger. That's when Milan finally tells him that the man's name is Danny. She also reveals that Danny is the son of one of the most powerful Italian mafia bosses. As the heir to the family empire, Danny is protected by 2 of the deadliest bodyguards in the world. Milan even warns Wild to stay away from them because they're completely ruthless and show absolutely no mercy. For the first time, Wild starts to realize just how dangerous this mission is. After that, Wild goes to Holly's apartment and tells her he couldn't find anything useful about the man who attacked her. Holly immediately loses her temper and accuses Wild of lying. Then she reveals something even more disturbing. She tells him that after assaulting her, the man pointed a gun at her head and forced her to tell him that she loved him. She had no choice but to do exactly what he said because she believed he was going to kill her. Now, more than anything, she wants justice because he tried to murder her. The moment Wild hears those words, he quietly gets up and walks away. He then meets up with Cyrus, and the two spend the night driving from one casino to another. Eventually, Cyrus heads inside to gamble while Wild stays close, protecting him from anyone who might try to rob him after he wins. While waiting, Wild runs into his old friend Cassandra, who works at the casino. She's had a crush on Wild for years, but he's never paid much attention to her. After Cyrus wins a huge amount of money, he and Wild celebrate together, but Wild can't stop thinking about Holly. He excuses himself, leaves Cyrus, and heads straight to Holly's apartment. Wild tells her that the man she's looking for is named Danny. Before leaving though, he gets angry and calls her out for lying to him. She had claimed she wanted to report the crime to the police, but in reality, all she wanted was revenge. Wild tells her the police will never be able to bring someone like Danny to justice. Holly looks him in the eye and says, "Then you have to make him pay for what he did to me." Wild hesitates because he knows this mission could easily get him killed. Trying to encourage him, Holly jokingly says, "If you die, I'll visit your grave once a year." Wild finally agrees to help her. He heads straight to the hotel where Danny is staying and comes up with a plan to get close to him. Wild knocks on Danny's suite, asking one of the bodyguards if he can speak with him. The guard refuses. Wild insists that it's personal and asks him to tell Danny that Benny sent him. The guard still says no and slams the door in his face. But as soon as he tells the other bodyguard what happened, they suddenly open the door again. After giving Wild a thorough search to make sure he isn't carrying any weapons, they escort him inside to meet Danny. The second Wild sees him, he wastes no time and asks one simple question: "Why did you attack my girlfriend Holly?" Danny bursts out laughing and casually says, "I was in a bad mood, and she was the prettiest girl in the whole hotel, so I did whatever I wanted to her." Then he pulls out $50,000 and tosses it onto the table. He looks at Wild and says, "Take the money and forget this whole revenge thing." Wild pretends to be shocked and thanks Danny for his generosity. Danny starts laughing at how incredibly gullible Wild seems, joking that only an idiot would believe he'd hand over that much money so easily. Then Danny suddenly points a gun at Wild's head and threatens to kill him unless he tells everyone how great he is. Wild freezes. With a gun aimed at him, he has no choice but to play along, just like Holly was forced to. But Danny isn't impressed with his performance. He gives Wild one last chance before filling him with bullets. Wild pretends to think about what to say, deliberately taking too long. Danny loses his patience and orders his bodyguards to throw Wild out of the hotel. That's exactly what Wild was waiting for. In an instant, he snaps one guard's leg with a devastating kick, then slams his credit card into the other guard's face and breaks his bones one after another until both men collapse unconscious. Wild then charges straight at Danny. Danny tries to fire his gun, but Wild smashes him across the face with the same credit card, knocking him out cold. After tying all three of them up, Wild calls Holly and tells her to come get her revenge herself. When Holly arrives, she's carrying several weapons. She grabs a pair of scissors and walks toward Danny, ready to cut him apart. Danny instantly breaks down, screaming and crying like a little kid, begging for his life. He tells Holly to spare him and take the $50,000 hidden inside his desk drawer instead. Holly takes the money, but she still wants revenge. She forces Danny to say, "I love you." After humiliating him in front of his own bodyguards, she finally decides to spare his life. She leaves the hotel with Wild. Outside, Wild hands Holly the entire $50,000, but Holly insists on splitting the money with him. Then she warns Wild that they need to leave the city immediately because Danny will definitely tell his father, the mafia boss, and they'll both be hunted down. After Holly leaves, Wild decides to gamble with the money they've just taken. His dream has always been to win $1 million, travel the world, and finally live the luxurious life he's always imagined. He heads back to the casino where he once again meets Cassandra. Wild starts gambling but quickly loses a large amount of money. Realizing things aren't going his way, he decides to quit before losing everything. A little later, he sits down with Cyrus and apologizes for leaving him alone at the casino the last time. But suddenly, Wild figures out the trick the casino uses to make players lose. He decides to give it one more shot. This time he plays with total confidence and incredible composure. Hand after hand, everything goes his way. Every prediction he makes is right. He keeps winning until he walks away with $500,000. Cyrus can hardly believe it. Wild stares at the pile of chips in disbelief and says that he spent 20 years of his life gambling without ever managing to save even half that amount. Cyrus is genuinely happy for him because Wild is finally within reach of his lifelong dream. The two of them walk over to the cashier so Wild can cash in his chips and finally leave the city for good. But just as he's about to exchange them, Wild suddenly freezes. Instead of cashing them out, he quietly takes the chips back. Cyrus looks at him in confusion and asks, "Why didn't you cash them in?" Wild looks at Cyrus and says, "For my whole life, this was the amount I dreamed of. But now everything has changed." Then he picks up the gambling chips and walks back to the table. To Cyrus's shock, Wild pushes all $500,000 into a single bet. His plan is simple. If he wins, he'll have $1 million, finally achieve his lifelong dream, and never have to worry about money again. The game begins. Wild is completely confident in the cards he's holding. Everything goes exactly as he expects until only one card remains. He's certain it's going to be a 4, the card that will make him a millionaire, but instead, it's a 6. In a single moment, Wild loses the entire $500,000. Every cent is gone. Without saying a word, he quietly walks away from the table. He heads into the restroom, devastated by what just happened. Later, he drinks until he passes out. When he wakes up, he finds himself inside a luxurious hotel suite. Sitting nearby is Cyrus, who has even prepared Wild's favorite drink for him. Wild is still crushed after losing everything, but Cyrus tells him there's something important he needs to confess. Wild sighs and says, "Go ahead, I'm listening." Then comes the biggest surprise. Cyrus admits that he isn't actually a gambler. He never hired Wild because he needed protection. The truth is that he's a successful software programmer who's already incredibly wealthy. Money has never been his problem. His real problem is that he's a coward. He wanted Wild to teach him how to stop being afraid and become truly brave no matter what it cost. Wild can barely process what he's hearing. Instead of answering, he explodes in anger, yells at Cyrus, and storms out. A little later, Wild is sitting alone in the casino, lost in thought. Suddenly, 2 men from the mafia approach him. They politely tell him their boss wants to see him and ask him to come quietly. Unfortunately for them, they pick the worst possible moment. Wild snaps. He brutally breaks both of them without holding back. Then even more gangsters rush in, trying to capture him, but they're no match for Wild. He tears through them one after another. A massive fight erupts across the casino as Wild demonstrates terrifying skill, smashing his enemies into the gaming tables and machines. Just as the fight reaches its peak, the police arrive and arrest him, but instead of taking him to jail, they bring him to Baby, the richest and most powerful man in the city. It turns out Danny had already gone to Baby, complaining about what Wild had done to him. Surprisingly, Wild and Baby already know each other very well. Baby welcomes him calmly and asks, "Why did you break into Danny's suite, beat up his men, and steal his money?" Wild answers, "Are you really going to believe Danny instead of believing I was helping my friend get justice?" Baby smiles and replies, "If I believed Danny, you'd already be dead." Then he takes Wild to one of the hotel's storage rooms where Danny is waiting. Baby sits both of them down face to face to hear the truth himself. Danny immediately points at Wild and shouts, "That bald guy is a liar!" Baby calmly turns to him and says, "You want me to kill him while he's innocent? You clearly don't know Wild. When he gets angry, none of us would stand a chance. So you'd better tell me exactly what happened." Danny tells Baby exactly what happened. He says that he let Wild into his suite because Wild claimed he had been sent by Baby, but the moment he walked in, Wild attacked him for no reason, beat up his bodyguards, and stole $50,000 with his girlfriend before escaping. Baby asks Danny the obvious question, "So what made Wild do all that to you?" Danny freezes. He can't tell the real reason, but he also can't think of a convincing lie. That's when Wild calmly steps in and says, "Let me ask you something. Why would I need to pull a gun on someone as weak as you?" Danny is furious, but before he can respond, Wild drops another bombshell. He tells Baby that Holly injured Danny below the waist and asks him to verify it himself. Then he says, "If I'm lying, you can take revenge on me." Danny immediately refuses. At that moment, Baby realizes exactly what happened. He understands that Danny assaulted Holly and that Wild was only helping his friend get justice. Wild smiles because he knows Danny can never prove otherwise. Baby sends Danny away, then turns to Wild and warns him. He tells him to leave the city immediately because Danny will never stop hunting him until he's dead. After that, Wild returns to the restaurant, wondering what to do next. He's so broke that he can't even afford to pay for his drink. Just then, Cyrus sits down beside him. He tells Wild that he's decided to leave the city, but before going, he wanted to thank him. Cyrus says Wild taught him more in the past few days than anyone else ever had. That's why he decided to help Wild achieve the dream he'd always talked about. He hands Wild an envelope. Inside is a plane ticket to Corsica and a check for $500,000, exactly the amount Wild had always dreamed of. Wild sincerely thanks him, but then he quietly says, "That only solved my first problem." Cyrus looks confused. "Wait, you have another problem?" Wild smiles and replies, "I could be dead at any moment." Before he can finish his sentence, Danny and his gang surround the restaurant, ready to kill him. Thinking quickly, Cyrus suddenly starts singing at the top of his lungs with the worst voice imaginable, drawing everyone's attention to himself. While the gang is distracted, Wild disappears. Danny storms into the restaurant but can't find him anywhere. Furious, he orders all his men to search every corner of the city and bring Wild back alive. What none of them realize is that Wild is hiding on the restaurant's rooftop, holding his breath. As he waits, memories of his violent past come rushing back. He makes his decision. Wild jumps down and launches himself into the middle of the gang, armed with nothing but the restaurant's kitchen knives. He cuts through them one by one. No one can even get close enough to touch him. One after another, they fall. Wild leaves a trail of bodies behind him, proving that he's the most terrifying nightmare they've ever faced. Finally, he reaches Danny. With one final stab, he ends Danny's life for good. Then Wild calmly walks away from the scene. Before leaving the city, Cyrus catches up with him, hands him the check and the plane ticket once again, and thanks Wild for everything. Because of him, Cyrus finally found the courage he'd been searching for his whole life. Wild thanks Cyrus as well for helping him escape the mafia. Then he leaves the city behind and boards a plane to Corsica, ready to enjoy the new life he finally earned. What would you have done if you were Wild? Would you risk your life to avenge Holly? Or would you take the $50,000 and walk away? Let me know your answer in the comments. And don't forget to like the video. Let's reach 1,000 likes.